Hi, my name is Guillory. I go by Guilly. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a Gardner Fellow at Lambda Legal and sit on the board of Transgender Legal Aid Clinic Houston. I want to thank everyone for joining here tonight. As a Black transgender man from Texas, I understand that this time can be difficult and that sometimes disheartening, but I'm very grateful for everyone joining here today. This purpose of this third webinar is so that families can stay informed, so that we can provide support for the families and resources. Hopefully, at the end of this, we can leave you all with a sense of hopefulness and tools for going forward. I want to thank Doctors for Change for hosting this today, as well as our partners. Today, we'll hear from a lawyer, a medical professional, a parent, and a mental health professional as well. We will have questions at the end, so please insert your questions in the question box. It should be below. And with that said, let's start with our first speaker.
Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Shelly Skeen. I use she, her pronouns, and I am an attorney with Lambda Legal in its Dallas office. Lambda Legal works for full and lived equality for people who are LGBTQ+, and also people who are living with HIV. We are the oldest and largest national organization working for civil rights for those folks. I work out of the Dallas office. Just wanted to let everybody know that we have a help desk. And our help desk has 4 full-time attorneys that take calls from all over the country. And then what they do with those calls is send them to our different offices. So if you all feel like you have been discriminated against, been treated unfairly, something doesn't feel right, feel free to contact our help desk. And then the help desk will get in touch with the attorneys in our different offices, which are in, let me go ahead and I'll say them real quick, Dallas, Atlanta, Chicago, Washington, D.C., LA, and also New York City. And so I'm going to talk just real briefly a little bit about where we are right now with the current legislative session. There is a bill, I'm going to call it the Anti-Trans Athlete Bill. It is SB2. And SB2 has not been voted out of the Public Education Committee, which is good news. And at this point, our second legislative session ends on the 6th, so September the 6th. And so if we can make it through the end of the session, which it looks like we've fingers crossed, that bill will not become law. However, we are going to have another special session to deal with redistricting. And special sessions are called by the governor. They're 30 days long. And the governor tells folks or tells the legislators what are the action items that they have to work on during the course of the legislative session. And so the last 2 special sessions that we have had, the anti-trans athlete bill has been one of the items that he has requested the legislature act on. I do want to tell everybody, just with respect to the hope that we've seen, and really great work on the ground by our partners that you saw on our very first slide. And what that is we have had more anti-LGBT bills filed across the country during this last legislative session than we've ever seen, and more in our state than we've ever seen. And the vast majority of those have been directed against folks who are trans. And so what we were able to do during the regular session, which started in January and ended on May the 31st, was we were able, with the work of you all, parents, families, community members, allies, we were able to stop every single one. Let me say that again, every single one we were able to stop, and we've been able to stop the anti-trans athlete bills that have been in our last, at least first special session, and hopefully this one as well. So continue to look at Equality Texas's website, reach out and provide your written testimony and your oral testimony. We'll talk a little bit more about how you can do that at the end. of our seminar. So I'm going to just real quickly talk about probably what you've heard in the news about the governor asking the commissioner of the, I'm going to call it the Department of Family and Protective Services, which is DFPS. You might hear me use the word CPS. They're not exactly the same, but I'm going to use CPS because I tend to not be able to say DFPS. So in any event, the governor asked the commissioner to let the commissioner know, or let the governor know whether or not gender affirming care involving surgery would be considered child abuse for the purposes of the work that CPS does. And what CPS does is they run the state's foster, well, let's just say they make sure that children are safe and well and taken care of. Now, that's the mission they have. That's not necessarily true with respect to what they do in our state. Our state DFPS system is currently under a court order being monitored by a judge for things that it can be doing better. So that's good news. So when the governor asked the commissioner to let him know whether or not surgery could be considered child abuse, she wrote him back and said, well, maybe, but if it's medically necessary, then probably not. After that, we have now seen a particular representative has written a letter to the Attorney General's office and has asked for clarification about the commissioner's response. And what he has specifically asked the Attorney General to opine on or to talk about is whether surgery, whether puberty blockers, whether I'm going to call it hormone therapy, maybe, this is good, not mental health care, but any one of those three things might constitute child abuse under the Texas Family Code, which is part of what CPS is tasked with managing. And so the AG's opinion, he's got 6 months to write an opinion back and let this particular legislator know what his opinion is about whether or not gender affirming care, not mental health care for trans youth, but gender affirming care constitutes child abuse. So what does that mean? And what do we care about an AG opinion? Well, AG opinions are not binding. So let me say that again. Attorney General opinions are not binding. So even if the Attorney General comes out with a letter or a response that says these three things, surgery, puberty blockers, and or hormone treatment, are and can be considered child abuse, that opinion is not binding on anyone because there's no current matter that's currently being heard by a judge. So it's just guidance. So that's one thing to be really, really clear about. And then I'm going to stop talking now. I'm going to let everybody else talk a little bit more. I'll come back and talk about how to do testimony and talk about some more practical ramifications about what we're seeing and what you all can expect, and also what Lambda Legal and the ACLU have already stated we would do if there were restrictions imposed upon gender affirming care. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Guilly. And Guilly, thank you so much.
Looks like I'm up, so I'll hop in.
All righty.
Are you coming back, Guilly?
I'm just saying that you're up next, Rachel. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. My name is Rachel Gonzales. I use she, her pronouns. I am the mom voice here, as you can see from the mom look I have going right now. It's been a classic mom of 3 day. So I just wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about the role that parents can play in fighting anti-trans legislation. My family has been advocating for about 5 years now. The picture on the screen is from Trans Lobby Day in 2017 outside the Capitol. Man, I don't know why I can't just talk right now without crying. If anybody happened to see the press conference last week at the Capitol, it was like mascara running ugly. Um, I know how taxing emotionally and physically um, this work is for parents and families and the trans community. It's so I've been thinking a lot about roles that parents can play, even more so, and parents have a really unique opportunity to connect advocacy for the transgender community with other aspects of their lives, using their social capital is the phrase I like to use, to ask their family members, their friends, their church members, school friends, whoever you are safe to talk about this advocacy work with, um, to ask them to please get involved, to please call legislators, to please take up conversations when talking points arise, in group settings. Not that there's a lot of group settings these days, thanks to COVID, but when there is an opportunity, to please hold that space. And even if they don't know what to say, just say that's not true if they're saying something that doesn't align with the safety of our kids. There is an opportunity to really start making a cultural shift here and supporting the community in a way that is desperately needed. Our legislators have invited the court of public opinion. I think this legislative session has been such a beatdown because it's been, well, so many reasons, but one of the reasons is the arguments that our legislators are pushing are a little bit more complex than like the bathroom bill. So it's a little bit more intimidating, I think, sometimes for allies to take up a conversation that has to do with kids in sports or medical care. And so I invite people in my life to simply say, I don't have all the answers, but I know that what you're saying is not true. And it's really frustrating and upsetting for anybody to see these lies spread about our kids. So it's just really important to gain as many allies as we can and call in as many people as possible to help fight this. And simultaneously, it is critically important for all of us to remember that this is not a new fight. This is something that has been going on for many decades, and there are so many people that have carried the weight of this over so many years. The Transgender Education Network of Texas is an organization that's been at some capacity in Texas for about 25 years. I think officially as an org for about 12. And it's an organization I work closely with. It's trans-led, and I am so very grateful for all of the people that have led the charge in fighting for our kids to be able to come out at a younger age, to be able to live authentically, and to all the people that keep showing up for this, because I know it's incredibly draining. I wanted to say something else about that, and I have lost my train of thought. For parents that are wanting to get more involved in advocacy, I would invite you to connect with me. There's other organizations. You can follow Equality Texas, definitely follow TENT, the Transgender Education Network of Texas. And this is kind of in the works, not exactly set in stone yet, but for those parents that either don't have, and I know, Shelly, you're going to come back to talking about testimony, but and I haven't actually run this by you yet, but I have had an idea for parents who have a little bit more bandwidth and have kids who are older to potentially partner with families like mine with younger kids who I don't know how many more times I can go to the Capitol and deal with this, and have parents that do have a little bit more bandwidth share the testimony of another family as well. So we're working on some partnerships and with families and some more message training. And so I would love to connect with anybody that is interested. And I'm so deeply grateful for everyone on this call, everyone in the fight. It's going to take all of us to shut down the attacks on our kids. This political theater has just gotten out of control, and we're not going to back down. So thank you so much. I'll pass it back to you, Guilly. If there's anything that any of the panelists want me to chime in on, want me to add to, let me know.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Next up, we'll be hearing from a mental health professional.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Semtlover-Makopoulos, and I am a licensed therapist. I really wanted to talk about the importance of mental health care and the importance of access. It's one of the first and foremost important things for anyone going through a crisis, trauma, anyone panicking about the legislation going on now. Speaking to a therapist can really help you process emotions and thoughts and anything that comes up, and help validate your concerns. We have a circle of trauma-informed care that I wanted to go over. It starts with safety. I don't know if we can change it to the next slide. Oh, sorry. Okay. So the first thing is safety. We want to make sure you're physically, psychologically safe against threats against your well-being. That includes legislative and executive actions as daily threats on this community. Calming, you want to, distress is normal and it's understandable in this time, but you want to encourage calming yourself down, doing activities that make you feel better. Music can really help, movement, arts, doing puzzles with your family, reading a book, just things that will calm yourself down and make yourself feel better. It's important to calm yourself down because it helps your brain and body relax and cope better. The next one is connectedness. It is really important to stay connected with those around you. Humans are social creatures. Keeping and maintaining a sense of community is very important, like attending webinars, going to play dates, people staying on their sports teams, continuing to go to school, meet with other parents. Let's see. Basically, it helps you realize you're not the only person in this situation, and there is a whole community to support you. Self-efficacy is getting involved, doing whatever you feel comfortable with, whether it's doing campaigns, fundraiser, advocacy, standing up and advocating for yourself. It's very empowering and kind of lessens the effect of trauma. Hope, remaining hopeful is extremely important because successful navigation of this kind of thing has happened before. We've overcome this, we've overcome past legislation that has been against this community. It's It's not the first time that's happened. You have to recognize that we all have strengths and skills and are able to help this community come together and stand against the psychological threat. Mental health care is really important. It helps to talk about how you're feeling. It helps to understand what you're feeling. Speaking with a therapist or a counselor can help with understanding like what your gender is, what if it's fluid, is it non-binary, what you identify with, and it can help you discover your name, your personal sense of self. And there are a lot of resources we're going to have at the end of this PowerPoint that can help you like connect with one of them. I don't know what else you wanted me to add.
That was great, Amy. Thank you. Next up, we'll be hearing from Dr. Feldmann.
Hey, I'm Dr. Feldmann, and I am a pediatrician, and I specialize in the care of adolescents. So I'm an adolescent medicine specialist at Legacy Community Health. And I got to say, first of all, I'm thrilled to be speaking as a part of Doctors for Change. I think it's an incredible organization. And my part in this panel is really to sort of let you know that the medical community, pediatricians, but actually all providers and all sort of agencies that represent the medical community are sort of aware of what's going on, and we understand the emotional toll this is taking on everybody. It's taking one on us too. We understand that families and youth are taking the biggest hit, and we're trying to keep you aware that we're aware of that. And I want to let you know that the medical community is here and supportive. There are really showing up for their community, and I wanted to let you know that we have everyone's back. It's kind of amazing the collaboration that has come together that I've become aware of since Texas has been taking a lot of heat lately. So things like the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, the Endocrine Society, and I'm just getting started. All of them are aware and very supportive of the power of affirmation, not just social, but medical and emotional affirmation as life-saving care for gender diverse young people and their families. There's position statements, there's all kinds of documentation out there. The American Academy of Pediatrics subsection on LGBTQIA health has been created, lots of cross-state collaborations, as well as collaborations with Lambda Legal and the ACLU and other agencies to really stand up for this community. Because we understand that this is life-saving care. There's nothing more powerful than affirmation, and affirmation in every way, be it social, medical, political, and emotional. And we understand that this is, like nothing in the body is a binary, nothing, not gender, not your cholesterol level, not your eye color. None of that is a binary. So why should gender be a binary? It shouldn't be, in fact. And all genders are normal and should be supported. So that one of the things that a lot of the agencies all have agreement on is what providers should be doing to support people, especially in these challenging times. And we spend time trying to educate providers within our communities, like for me, it's the American Academy of Pediatrics, about how to support young people, especially in any times, and these times are any times, what an agency can do, how an agency can make a community more supportive, how forms can be supportive, or bathrooms, or electronic medical records, how those can use a proper name and a proper pronoun for people. What can we do to help inclusion in our clinics and communities, and demonstrate the value to our colleagues and to anyone we speak to about the importance and value of diversity as a really big boon for the medical community and for the entire community as humans. And also, we're trying to prioritize. This is exciting information around research, is that the first big NIH award that is sort of cross-country, there's 4 national centers for gender diverse care for young people that have collaborated around a long-term, highly expensive award to help do research on long-term, short and long-term care and the impacts it has on young people. So it's exciting that now we're starting to see some funding and some actual real investment in the care that's happening. So again, I'm just here to provide support and let you know that your providers, we get it, and we're really fighting for you and with you, and we'll do everything we can to support everybody in every way that we can. That's all I got.
Thank you, Dr. Feldmann. Before we get to the end, I would love to hear from Shelly and Rachel about how tips on testifying.
Yeah. Let me talk about, before I head into testifying, let me try to also level set and give a little bit more hope in addition to what I said earlier about Attorney General opinions not being binding. Let me talk just a little bit about what we've seen nationwide with respect to some of the legislation that did pass during this last legislative session. And so with respect to the legislation that we saw that did pass, for example, there was an anti-trans athlete ban that passed in West Virginia. That law was challenged before it ever even went into effect, and it was stopped. We saw the same thing in Idaho a couple of years ago with respect to an anti-trans athlete bill. It was stopped. We also saw in Tennessee this year a bill that would have made it so that, or a piece of legislation that actually passed, that would have made it so that if you went into a business and the business allowed you to use the bathroom that matched your gender identity and not the bathroom that based on the sex you were assigned at birth, that they would have to post a sign on the outside of the business. That law was stopped before it went into effect. Then we also saw in Arkansas a medical care ban, a health care ban, just like what we're talking about now, that would have prohibited gender affirming care. That law was stopped before it went into effect. And back in May, when we were seeing healthcare bans, that's what I'll call them, for gender affirming care for trans youth. And remember, this is best practice, medically necessary care. And every single major medical organization and mental health provider or organization says so, to the tune of over 647,000 professionals. So that's very, I think, important to also understand. But back in May, the ACLU and Lambda said that if we saw restrictions on gender affirming care here in our state, then our goal at that point was to go ahead and file a lawsuit to challenge that particular legislation. So we're still in that posture. I'm not saying that we're going to do it, because lawyers can never ever guarantee that we're going to do something. But that is something that we've said before. We're here to support you on a legal front. You've heard from a doctor. The doctor is also here, a pediatrician, to talk to you and is available for support. We've had a mental health professional, and that's what we've done at each one of these sessions, is trying to provide you with that holistic look at what this looks like. And then we've also had Rachel here, and Rachel has been a huge, tireless advocate, along with her husband and along with her family, on behalf of not just their family, but many, many families, and all the families, frankly, in our state, who are going through the same things that they have gone through. So we're here to support and help, and you've got many different perspectives bringing their vision to the plate. So let's just talk real briefly then about two other things, and I'll try to be not long-winded. Lawyers like to be long-winded. I'm having a little bit more fun with this one. Okay, so let's talk about changes to the Texas Family Code. During the last legislative session, there were many changes made to the Texas Family Code. Most of them, and they all went into effect today. And so let me tell you what they did for parents who are concerned about working with their team of doctors and mental health providers to provide gender affirming care for their kiddos. The short answer is the legislature did us a favor, and the favor that they did is they made it much harder for kids to be removed from homes based on allegations of child abuse, whatever that may ultimately look like at the end of the day. And they did that in some really, really significant ways. No longer can a kid be taken out of a house without a court order. That was not the case before. They have also changed the definition of neglect in the family code. So neglect falls within child abuse. It's part of the definition of child abuse. And they've made that definition much more onerous, meaning there has to be more to show that there has been neglect. So that's going to make it harder for kids to be taken out of the house. And let me tell you what they are, and then I'm going to talk about mandatory reporters, and then we'll talk about testimony. And this time I'm going to read this to y'all. Last time I did it off the top of my head, but this time I'm going to read it because I want everybody really to hear this. So, family code, new language, changes the definition of neglect. A person's acts or omissions must now evidence blatant disregard for the consequences of their actions or inactions that results in harm or immediate danger to the child's physical health or safety. Instead of defining neglect as conduct that results in a substantial risk, that's what the old law says, effective today, it's no longer that. So let me start again. Instead of defining neglect as a conduct that results in a substantial risk, the conduct must now constitute immediate danger to the child to constitute neglect. Allowing the child to, so that's the main thing you need to know. That's really, really important. The other thing is if you look at Commissioner Masters' response to Governor Abbott, in it, she talks about mandatory reporters. So folks who have professional licenses, who have a duty to report child abuse, and also anyone else, because anyone else, if there is child abuse, they have a duty to report. But the standard or the test used to be cause to believe. Cause to believe. Now it's reasonable cause. Reasonable cause means more than cause to believe. It means that your belief that a child is suffering child abuse has to be reasonable to an ordinary and prudent person. It has to be reasonable under the circumstances. It's a much higher standard. And so that, again, ups when you would be triggered to make a report of child abuse. So that's really important for everyone to understand. So I hope that made sense. And then the last thing I'll talk about just hopefully quickly here is testimony. So let's talk about testimony. If you go and testify, so it looks like we are going to have a special session, a third special session, which will deal with redistricting, which I think you heard me say earlier, which will more likely than not also include bills that would prohibit trans athletes from competing either in K through 12 and potentially at the university level. So if you go and testify, here's some things that you need to know. The first thing you need to do is you need to, when you get there, give the legislature, and this is whether you're giving oral testimony or written testimony, and you can submit written testimony through Equality Texas's website. That written testimony gets made part of the record. Why do we care about written testimony? Why do we care about oral testimony? Here's why we care. If you all talk about the impact on you and your families, then those impact statements and that testimony can help us if we want to challenge the law in the future. Because if the legislature goes ahead and passes a law when they know that the impact is going to disproportionately affect people and affect them in very, very foundational ways, such as stopping gender affirming care for kids or not allowing trans athletes to participate in sports, then that helps us file a lawsuit. So what do you do when you go to testify or when you want to write written testimony? Here's what you're going to do. You're going to say who you are, what you want, then tell the legislatures how the proposed legislation will impact you. And when I say impact you, what I mean is impact you, not your neighbors. So from your own personal knowledge, what will happen? That's that. Give 3 examples of that. So your first part, introduce yourself, say who you are, what you want, then talk about impact and give 3 examples of what the impact would be of that legislation. And then the last piece is you're going to conclude and you're going to say, here's what I want and here's why I told you why. 3 reasons. That's all you need, 3 examples. And you don't have to be really specific or detailed. So that's the roadmap for how you would do the testimony. If you are asked questions by the legislators, here are some things to know. The first thing is answer only the question that's asked. Listen to the question and answer only the question that's asked. So if somebody says, where did you go to high school? You can say Bellevue High School. Don't say, I went to Bellevue High School and I was the class valedictorian and I married the homecoming queen, or whatever it may be. Only answer the question that's asked. The second thing that you need to do is always tell the truth. Tell the truth about how something will affect you and your family. And the third thing is you can only talk about what you have seen, heard, or felt, what's in your own personal knowledge. So what does that mean? That means you can't talk about what your neighbor was thinking when they said something or when they did something, because you don't know what was in their head, right? So only talk about what is personal to you. If you are asked a question and you don't know the answer because it's about an event that's going to take place in the future, then they're asking you to speculate about something that you can't possibly know what's going to happen, because no one knows what's going to happen in the future. So don't answer. You can say, look, that's going to be in the future. I don't know what's going to happen. You're asking me to speculate, right? Then 2 more things, and I'm going to let Rachel hop on. The other 2 things is if they ask you a legal question, a question that calls for expertise that you don't have. For example, if you're not a doctor, if you're not a mental health provider, if you don't know what would require a certain type of gender affirming care, because you're not a doctor or a mental health provider, you can't answer that question. You can say, look, I'm not a doctor. I don't know the answer to that question. Ask the doctor. So those are really just the main things if you're asked any questions. Really, really simple. Tell the truth. Answer only the question that's asked. It's okay, really, if you don't know the answer, right? Don't speculate about something that hasn't personally happened to you. And then the last one is don't talk outside of your expertise. It's okay if you don't know the answer. I think hopefully that was helpful. And so Rachel, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Shelly. That's really helpful. And as long as I've been doing this, it helped me so much to hear those words from you in the past, just thinking about personal impact and laying out, what you want to say. I did want to add one more thing that I think is really important to be mindful of as legislators have become a little bit more emboldened with what they are willing to ask parents and kids. I think primarily parents. So just keep in mind that everything that you say is on public record, and if they're asking any kind of question that is specifically regarding your family or your child's medical care, their birth certificates, you can say that's private information that does not need to be shared publicly. And certainly if they ask any kind of questions about their body, that is way out of bounds, and they should definitely be told that that is not an appropriate question for anyone to be asking about a minor child, and you cannot answer that. So it's not something that happens often, but it has happened, and it seems to be getting progressively worse. Sorry, I bring the doom and gloom to all of this. So again, if you're concerned about what to say, you have people that you can reach out to here that can help you with talking points. And I don't know what else I wanted to add. I think, Shelly, was there anything else that you specifically wanted me to speak to here?
I think maybe you might talk about just some general, and I'm going to kind of go off script here, we've got a few minutes, maybe talk generally about what a day at the Capitol would be like as far as so that you can be comfortable, because you're going to be sitting and waiting. So what is it that you've done to sort of make it a little bit more easy on you and your family?
That's a great question, because I forget how intimidating it is to show up at the Capitol when you don't know what the drill is. So it's a little bit easier right now because COVID's not in Texas anymore. So you don't have to get tested to go inside the Capitol anymore. You do have to get tested to go inside a Senate hearing, but so you'll go through security when you get there, and if you register with Equality Texas to be there, then they will send you a message of where everyone is congregating. So generally there is a room somewhere in the Capitol where people that are there all to testify against the same, always against the same legislation, can get together and often have food delivered, or they'll have somebody will cater it. This last Tuesday, my representative Jasmine Crockett's office catered Taco Deli for anybody that was there to testify, which was awesome. She's amazing. And even though she was still in DC, because she's awesome. And so as soon as you get there, the first thing you want to do is register to testify. And even if you're not testifying, you can do what's called dropping a card. There's no technical dropping of a card anymore, but there are iPads, and someone from Equality Texas or Tent can walk you through registering. You just put your name, and I probably shouldn't be saying this on a webinar, but I never put my real address because I'm that level of paranoid. I put a general vicinity address for my family, and then you register your position. And it's important, if you're there just on behalf of yourself, to list as you're testifying for yourself. But for example, I serve on the Human Rights Campaign Parents for Transgender Equality Council. So I always list myself as testifying on behalf of myself and an organization. And I list the Human Rights Campaign. And so when you get up to testify, it's generally a very long day. Not always, but generally there's a lot of waiting, and it gives you an opportunity to practice what you're going to say. And you want to time yourself, because usually you have 2 minutes, and they will usually cut you off at 2 minutes. So it's important to time yourself, and you have an opportunity to, visit with other people and practice your talking points. And what was I going to say? When you're called up, it's important to say who you are, your position on the bill, and who you're representing. So you'll say, I would say, my name is Rachel Gonzales. I use she, her pronouns. I am here testifying on behalf of myself and the Human Rights Campaign Parents for Transgender Equality Council against SB 2, for example. So I think is that a decent-ish recap? The cafeteria is not open late. So if it is looking like a late night and you do have any kind of dietary restrictions, it's a good idea to have some extra food with you. And if it's a really long night, you can definitely leave the Capitol and go walk to a restaurant. We've done all the different variations of this, but there is security everywhere. So if you have an issue with anyone, you can definitely ask security. They will help you. And there will be other people around to help you. It's not something that happens often. It can happen, but it is generally a rarity. Usually you'll just get shady looks from people, and so I confidently wear all of my buttons and bring it. So anything else, Shelly?
I think that's great. I think that's great. The only thing I would add would be that go to Equality Texas's website. They have the portal where you can upload your written testimony. And they also have a sheet on their website that talks about sharing your story, and it's a great little template for getting you thinking about how you can share your story and talk about the impact a piece of legislation would have. And then the other thing I would say too is for written testimony or oral testimony, you're really looking at about a page and what, a quarter, maybe by the time you get through that 2 minutes. So you've got to kind of, you know, it's not long, it's not arduous. You can sit and write that pretty quickly and say it pretty quickly. So that's all I've got. Thank you. And well, I guess we'll turn it back over to our mental health folks and our pediatrician for any final words, and Guilly, you as well.
Just a quick reminder to everyone to breathe, do not lose hope, keep updated and connected with friends, and we're here as things develop. We will have this webinar next month if something is an update is necessary. And now we're going to open it up to Q&A. If you can drop any questions you have into the question box, we'll hopefully get all those answers tonight.
So Guilly, this is Shelly. If we don't have any questions, we definitely want to make sure that everybody, or I would say, it would be great if our doc and our mental health professional kind of gave us their parting words and any calls to action they have as well, not to jump in and corral the conversation.
No, that's a great idea. Dr. Feldmann or Amy, do you have anything to say?
I'm sorry, what was you hoping me to add? A call to action, and what was the other one?
Just any parting words that you want to share with folks.
Well, I just want to let everyone know that, you know, hopefully, I mean, I know that our doctors are here for you. And we sort of stand behind and we advocate as physicians for things to be as supportive as they need to be. And, you know, I hope your doctors are as supportive as they need to be. If not, we're happy to help them figure that out. But we want to be a safe space at your doctor's office. We want it to be, or your NP, your provider's office, to be a safe space where you and your family can come and be affirmed, to know that you're cared for and know that we're fighting for you.
Hi again, guys. Just wanted to say, for the mental health community, we are here for you. We're behind you. Don't be afraid to reach out. There are providers that are there to support you, and use your network. Thank you.
Alrighty, we have not yet received any questions. So I guess we'll wrap things up early. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and logging in. I would like to thank our speakers for being here today as well. And another special thanks to Doctors for Change for hosting this. Be on the lookout for a tip sheet on testifying, as well as some other resources we'll email out to you all. And hopefully we see you next month at our next webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Guilly.